Story of Yang Huiyan. Like I said, she's the richest woman in Asia, but today she can barely hold on to that tag. Yang has suffered a loss of almost $12 billion. How did that happen? All thanks to the collapse of the Chinese property sector. Yang had inherited her wealth from her father, Yang Huiyan. He is the founder of a company called Country Garden. It's China's biggest property developer. In 2005, Yang Sr. transferred his shares to his daughter. She is now a majority shareholder in Country Garden. Last year, her net worth stood at around $24 billion. Today, it has dropped to $11.3 billion. It's a fall of 52%. What explains this collapse? The turmoil in China's property sector. Country Garden has managed to avoid the storm so far, but the company is struggling. They made an announcement recently. They will sell their shares to the public. Why? Because they want $343 million. The company seems to have run out of cash. It needs money to pay its debts. Country Garden is the second most indebted developer in China. How much does it owe? At least $220 billion until last year. That was the debt. The company has not defaulted, but it needs money to service future loans. It also wants funding for future projects. And no one is willing to lend to Chinese developers these days, not even Asia's richest woman. So the only way for Country Garden to raise money is perhaps by selling shares. Yang Huiyan has become the face of China's real estate crisis. Her swift decline is a major red flag for many. It underlines how the crisis in China's property market could damage its financial system. If China's largest property developer cannot raise cash today despite zero defaults, it means that Chinese banks are reeling too. Which is why Beijing has now been forced to come up with a bailout. It's official. China's central bank has been asked to step in. It will mobilize $148 billion. Where will this money go? It will be used to revive stalled projects in the property sector. How will developers get this money? This is not going to be a free ride. They will have to take it as a loan. State-owned banks in China will give these loans. Beijing says these will be low-interest loans. We are talking about an interest rate of about 1.75% a year. And it may sound like an attractive proposition, but can it solve the problem? The Chinese property sector has a huge burden of debt. Developers are defaulting. 24 Chinese developers today are under the lens. Some of them have already defaulted. The rest are close to a default. And China's solution is to give them more loans to deal with existing loans. How does that even help? Chinese banks are already struggling. The list of bad loans is growing longer. I have an estimate with me. Debts worth $436 billion have been classified as non-performing loans in China. Chinese commercial banks gave out these loans, but the borrowers have stopped paying back their debts. Several bad loans have been written off. China's banking regulator recently issued orders. It asked small and medium-sized banks to dispose of some loans. What was the value of those loans? Close to $88 billion, according to one report. So Chinese banks are clearly on shaky